Coming to you from deep in the Ozarks and Ridge Runner Studios. This is the Nursing Underground, a podcast that will help clear the white noise in medicine and politics and help you define the forest from the trees. Here is your host, David Big Dave Ezel. Welcome to the Nursing Underground.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Nursing Underground. I'll be your host, Big Dave. And this week we're going to be talking about America's dirty little secret. Yes, we have one. Yes, several dirty little secrets have come to light in the last 2 years. While the government thought that it was going to be great to have us all locked down and confined to our homes, they forgot about the internet. And what that allowed people to do was, you know how you sit down in front of your computer and you type in a search and you're reading, and then you see something interesting in a sentence, and then you click the little blue mark in the sentence and it takes you to another article and another article. The term finally became known as rabbit holing. So people started going down these rabbit holes and people started finding things. I myself, in between work, did the same thing. But before we tear off into our dirty little secret, we're going to get a word from one of our sponsors.
Do you have a friend or family member you're having trouble buying a gift for? You just can't find the right gift for the person who has everything? Then go to Rockin' Magnolia Customs, a place where you can pick out and design the perfect gift for that special someone. That's rockinmagnoliacustoms.com, or find them on Facebook at Rockin' Magnolia Customs.
Remember, go check out Amy at Rocking Magnolia Customs, where there's no G in rocking, and the customs always starts with a K. It's rockingmagnoliacustoms.com. Tell Amy Big Dave sent you. When you hear the term rape, most people visualize a big burly male predator that has attacked a female, and that's rape. Do you often, when you hear the term rape, do you visualize a female offender? If you said no, then you're right. Yet they exist, and they exist in large numbers, as many as men, as far as the offenders go. The victims are abundantly the same, and you've got to ask yourself, why do we not hear about the female offenders? We did get a sample of that early in the mid to late 2000s when all of these teachers were seducing their male students. That's not necessarily how it goes. That's kind of stereotypical, but it does occur that way. But a lot of times it occurs at parties. A lot of times it occurs out in the open. A lot of time it occurs at these weddings that are held in hotel rooms. Most sexual offenders are men. We understand that. The research starting to indicate that female perpetrators are more common than they were ever believed. Laura Stemple and Alan Meyer in Scientific American did a large-scale study. Women are often perpetrators of sexual crimes. There was a study published in 2014 finding that men were sexually victimized more often than most people would even expect. They found that over a 1 year period, both sexes were similarly likely to be subjected to non-consensual sex, and most of the male victims reported being victimized by female perpetrators rather than male perpetrators. But regardless of the gender involved, non-consensual sex is sexual assault, yet it's not the perception when the perpetrator is female and the victim is male. Gender stereotypes impact this perception. Sexual coercion, pressure and persuading an unwilling sexual partner into engaging in sexual activity a lot of times get labeled on men with women that are at parties and have had a little bit too much to drink. But the same can be said in vice versa mode, where the women are caressing and touching and rubbing up against men. Whether or not the man is a willing participant is not the same way that people think that men do women, whether they're willing participant or not. At these parties, if the person is not willing, wasn't ready, not what they expected, and they're coerced into doing it, that is sexual assault. Doesn't matter the sex of the victim. The problem that we have is a perception in America. Um, that's where all of this comes in. Men who are persuaded to engage in sexual relationships due to sexual coercion are seen more often. They should be more responsible than the women. Here's the problem. If alcohol makes a woman where she's unable to fight back, would it not do the same thing to a man? Even though a man is stronger, would he be effective enough when he fights back? Probably not. More than likely not. The perceived victim should be more responsible is the thought people have when it comes to men. Oh, well, he should have known how much he needed to drink. Well, men do the same thing as women. They start drinking, having a good time, and drinking. Before they realize what's happened, they go to stand up. And we've all been there. Everybody listening, if they have drank at any point in time at a party, have sat there and drank, stood up, and it snuck up behind you and kicked you right square your ass. We've all done it. I'm just as guilty as anybody else. In all of these studies, what they started finding was that the female to male coercion should be more controllable than the male to female. And they said that this attributed to greater responsibility to a man who was verbally coerced into a sexual relationship. Not only are men in these scenarios, they were seen that they would want to have them to be more responsible, but the research indicates their victimization that occurs is taken much less seriously, because we know guys like, hey, he's 15 and this 19-year-old girl slept with him. Well, that's exactly what happened. But everybody wants to give the guy a high five, and nobody really asks the 15-year-old how he feels. One of the statements that I found in this highly disturbing research, it was a lot for me to take in. You have to understand, this is not an easy subject for me right now. I have the stuff I have read, the stuff that I have seen, and stuff that I've been subjected to while doing this research really affected me. One of the statements that I found where a guy was coerced into having sex while he was drunk by two girls at a party. He said, you don't feel like a person anymore. You feel like just a thing, like you're subhuman. It gets to you, and you stop thinking of yourself as a human. You stop thinking you deserve to be happy, or that you even deserve to have friends or to be loved. Eventually, you stop thinking you deserve to live. Maybe you act on those feelings, maybe you don't. He personally did. He was hospitalized 4 times before he got help and found a therapist that would actually take him seriously and reiterated and rejustified and made this kid know that it wasn't his fault. He recounted the post-traumatic stress problem that he had, the emotional damage. It caused him to have sexual dysfunction in later relationships. It gave him difficulty in forming a relationship, and he was victim blaming. He was blaming himself for not being the guy that wants to give the high fives or get the high fives. That's the part that I had a problem with as a guy. I've acted the same way. Growing up, becoming aged, a lot of people call me the old man. Um, my kids 25 and 21 now, and all of their friends still call me Pops. There's a perception there too, right? But the same perception's not attributed to men in their situations. Just like I feel like I'm still a young guy, but I know by my age range I'm not. If a woman has the same PTSD problems that the guys do, what are we doing to treat? How many programs are out there for men? Any? I had a hard time finding them when I was doing the research on this. I could find one on every corner for a woman's sexual victimization, but I couldn't find hardly any support for a male sexual victimization. It's a real thing out there, folks. The numbers don't lie. The research has been going on since 2010, and I ask you again, have you ever heard about it? 9 times out of 10, you have not. You can find these stories and take care of that. Sorry about that. You can find these stories out there, and then when you find out what they did, I made contact with this young man. I asked him, was there any history of sexual abuse while he was younger by women? Was there any sexual abuse by men? No, he had a perfectly normal childhood. He went to a party in high school. He was in the 10th grade. I said, so if you could recall how it happened, what would you say? He said, well, alcohol was involved. This is about to get very graphic. If you don't want to hear what I'm about to tell you and how it happens and how it occurs, you're more than welcome to cut it off and not listen to me again. This is not content for young people. This is adult content for sure. It's not sexually charged in nature. It is a fact. He said he pretty girl walked up to him and handed him a drink, and he drank it, and they waited a little bit and brought him another one and another one. And he can remember sitting on the couch and them coming over to him, rubbing all over him, rubbing his legs, rubbing his hair, rubbing his neck, rubbing his chest, rubbing his penis, causing him to get an erection, getting up and leaving, going to get him another drink, and bringing it back to him. And they did this for hours. They controlled his alcohol intake. He was a kid. They were not. One of the girls was 19. The other one was 22. They came back and got him and said, come on, you need to walk it off, walk it off, walk it off. Then they took him outside to a pickup truck that had a camper shell on it with a bed in the back. They threw him in there, and of course, we know what happened. He finally came around. Of course, when he woke up, his pants were down. They were doing things to him. Wasn't anything, he said, that anybody would consider nastily graphic. But it was stuff he was not ready for. It's not what he had in his mind, how he would lose his virginity, but they took that from him. See, the biggest falsehood in this is that not all men are bigger or stronger or more assertive. There's very little understanding, as far as I could find in the research, that sexual abuse of men by women is just as damaging to the victim. It's also a criminal offense, and it also carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. The problem is nobody reports it. It doesn't get reported because the viewpoint is he should be getting a high five. He shouldn't be filing a police report because all men are sexual creatures. Now, that idea comes from the feminist movement. Hate to say it, it's the truth. Not doxing nixing the feminist movement, not doxing what they do. I'm just telling you that they are so have fought so hard for the victim shaming, and they have fought so hard against it being swept under the rug that they forgot to push out that it also happens in men. There's a high prevalence of sexual victimization among men, similar to the prevalence found among women. The actions of these girls with this young gentleman, they were predators. He found out when he got to school. The next week, everybody was teasing him because they heard how he lost his virginity. The two girls were around the school bragging. That's victimization. They bragged about it. Of course, it got out. It wasn't a locker room discussion like they thought. It happened in the girls' bathroom. They talked and told this girl, and that girl told their boyfriend. The boyfriend told this, and this guy was playing football. He was involved in sports. He was having a good time, and he found himself withdrawing from all of his social activities, withdrawing until he finally, right after summer school had started, he attempted to take his own life, and that was the first time. It happened 4 more times. He never recovered, never offered help. He told his dad. His dad didn't ever say anything. That's not the dad's fault. How would you deal with that as a parent? I wouldn't know how to deal with that. But when I started looking into that, and I know what these are female predators, I started to go find studies for sexual female predators, and I found hardly anything. There was hardly any information out there. 38% of victims are men in sexual violence that has been reported. 38%. That's in the last year. Prior to that, it was less than 18%. For years, and years before the last few, FBI's definition of rape is gendered. The big statement was carnal knowledge of a female forcibly against her will. But they did a recent redefinition and focused on forced penetration. No mention of gender. There is another new category out there now. CDC has created a new category called being forced to penetrate. Some kinds of victimization, men and women have equal experiences. Men have historically used sexual violence to subjugate women, and probably in most countries they still do. Feminism has fought long and hard to fight rape myths. If a woman gets raped, it's somehow her fault. That's what the feminist movement fought against for years. That's called victim shaming. Here is the numbers that blew my mind here. In 2011, there was a study done. They did a survey of about 305 male college students. They found that 51% had reported at least one sexual victimization experience since they were 18. I mean 16, not 18. And half of those reported the female as a perpetrator. They did the same study again in 2014, 284 men, high school and college, and they found that 43% reported being sexually coerced, and most coercive incidents resulted in unwanted sexual penetration or unwanted sexual intercourse. Of those 284 men and boys in the college and high school, 95% reported a female perpetrator. The Census Bureau's epidemiology study that's based in alcohol-related conditions took a sample of 43,000 adults. There was a little difference in the sex self-reported of the sexual perpetrators. Of all of those people they got in contact with, they affirmed they had ever forced someone to have sex with you against their will, 43.6% of the females surveyed in that said they had forced a man to have sex with them when the man wasn't really willing to have sex. That kind of caught me off guard. Why hadn't I heard these numbers before? Did it happen to my kids? I've talked to them about it. I can't get a straight answer. And I can't get a straight answer because of the viewpoint that men have with other men in the same situation. Male victims experience pressure to interpret sexual victimization in a way more consistent with masculinity ideals. Men should relish any available opportunity for sex. You know, that's where he comes up. Well, if you miss getting some, you just miss it. That's not always the case. You wonder why all of these men are bad guys out there. That's all I hear or see. I work in a female predominant, a field of study or a field of job that is predominantly females, and I hear all the time, oh, well, if I'm going to give it up, you ought to be happy. Well, if I'm not willing, you can't, don't force it on me, because some can't control their arousal. You touch them the wrong way and it's ready to go. That's just how it is. Sorry. That's why I said this ain't for the sleight of heart. If you don't want to listen, you can cut it off. It gets worse. Focus on female penetration is skeptically viewed as an attempt to upend the woman's right agenda for male perpetrated sexual victimization. They don't want all this information out there, so therefore they have pushed it down and pushed it down and pushed it down. And the problem is they have underestimated the way men look and perceive things, and they don't allow men to actually have feelings about what's going on with their bodies. They don't allow men to have a say in this situation, because the female gets raped, you don't get a say. The furthest thing from the truth is that. Let's look at the numbers, right? Let's look at the numbers. In the U.S., 43.6% of women experience some form of sexual violence contact in their lifetime. 1 in 5 women in the United States reported, completed, or attempted rape at some point in their lifetime. That's probably around, the numbers here are 52.2 million experience some sort of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. That's women. The 25.5 million reported, completed, or attempted rape at some point in their lifetime. 13.5% of women have experienced completed forced penetration. 6.3% experience attempted forced penetration, and 11% experience alcohol and drug facilitated penetration at some point in their lifetime. 1.2% of women, or 1.5 million, have completed or attempted rape in the 12 months preceding the survey in 2012. 1.4 million women have been made to penetrate someone else in their lifetime. A third of women reported unwanted sexual contact, groping, grabbing, caressing of the breast. That's 44.3 million women, in case you're wanting a number. A quarter of the men, 27.6 million men, have experienced some form of sexual contact violence in their lifetime. 27 million. 3.5% of men experience violent sexual contact. 7.9 million in the United States were made to penetrate someone else at some point. That's called coercion intercourse, where the girl wants it and just continuously rubs and caresses the guy until he gives in for it. 1.4% of these men experience situations where they were made to make them penetrate someone else through use of force. and 5.5% were made to penetrate someone else through completed alcohol facilitation at some point. 827,000 men have reported being made to penetrate. 2.8 million have completed or attempted rape victimization in their lifetime. 2.8 million men have been raped in the last 5 years. 10.6 million men experience sexual coercion. You're being worn down by somebody, repeatedly asked for sex, sexual pressure, somebody using their influence or authority over the child or over the man or whatever. 10.6 million in their lifetime. 19.9 million men have reported unwanted sexual contact at some point in their lifetime. Just by me talking about this, I'm going to be accused of undermining attempts to address the rape and sexual assault of women, which is more extensive and more harmful social phenomenon and a public health crisis. And yes, there are indeed poisonous people out there who say women just as bad. I'm not trying to say that at all. What I'm saying is that we have this problem and nobody in America wants to talk about it. We want to have a victimization of women, but we don't want to flip it over and say the same victimization can occur in men. Collectively, we have difficulty in understanding and addressing sexual abuse of men by women. We have archaic conceptions of male and female sexuality. Boys and men are not always gagging for sex on anyone. Women aren't coy in general. There's no Romeo that's going to come along, sweep them off of their feet, and then abuse them in this way. We need better education of our young people. And I'm not talking about grooming these kids in the classroom. That's a whole nother show. What we need to do is tell these guys, kids in high school, that you can be forced to penetrate somebody against your will. That's rape. If you're forced to penetrate somebody and coerced into doing it, that's sexual assault. If it's occurred by a woman, that's still sexual assault. It's worse if they have authority over you, such as a teacher. The problem is the concept that sexual coercion of men is not viewed the same as it is for women. It's not viewed as seriously as a sexual coercion of women. We base our views on sexual coercion based on our gender. That's the breakdown in our country right now. America has got just as big a problem with female rape as they do with male rape. And nobody wants to talk about it. I've listened and listened and listened. I found like 4 podcasts out of 3.2 million in the databases that I've searched. I found 4 that dealt with this subject. I will actually be number 5. Until we get to the point where we can acknowledge that men are victims of sexual assault and sexual coercion, and female perpetrators need to be subject to the same laws and punishment as men, and until we get to the point to where men can feel comfortable about reporting their victimization, is the only time we're going to be able to ever get a hold of the scope of the problem, ensure that justice is done, and make sure that these people, male and female, both have the same amount of mental health post-education and mental health relief after the fact. So they'll be able to cope with what happened instead of being like this young man I talked to who had attempted suicide 4 times because he couldn't tell anybody because all they wanted to do was give him a high five instead of saying, did it hurt you? How did that make you feel? I know that is an overused statement. How does that make you feel? But we don't really ask that. We say it as a joke. Why aren't we asking it as a real question? Why aren't we? Is it because we've taken the perceptions of men and put them in and carved them in stone and made it that's what it has to be when it doesn't? Sure, we've stopped the feminist movement and brought it to fact that with victim shaming that she dressed that way, she deserved it, and we can apply that to men. But he dressed that way, he deserved it, doesn't get the same response, does it? What if it was your 17-year-old teenage boy who was fed liquor at a store and then wakes up in the back of a pickup truck with a camper shell on it? I mean, that gives us the time frame that this happened with this kid. And he's being sexually assaulted by 2 girls, which is every guy's fantasy. But that's not even, he had not even lost his virginity yet. That's how he lost his virginity. And that's nowhere what he had in his mind. That was the biggest problem for him. It caused him to have dysfunction later in life. It caused him to literally destroy his marriage. And nobody cared. There wasn't a therapist in the world that cared about it. And why? And that's the first 30 minutes of the show tonight. Just something to think about. It's America's dirty little secret. I will talk about a podcast that I was on a couple of weeks ago. If everybody wants to go find and subscribe, it's on Spotify and Anchor FM. It's called Renegades Rant. Me and a friend of mine, Stacy, were on this podcast together talking about what we're doing for the public, the patriots out there that are having a hard time making the ends meet, doing sourced crowdfunding. Go listen to that. It's called Renegades Rant. Spotify, Anchor FM, Google, Apple. Just go to your podcast provider and type in the search bar. If not, go to Google search or any search engine and type in Renegades Rant and find the podcast. He has a lot of great episodes, brings out a lot of good ideals, and is just a fantastic host and a great podcaster. Was on another one called A Little Extra Lambo. Met this guy on TikTok. I did a 2.5 hour show with him. And me and another nurse was on that show discussing our history, our jobs, what it is, what it's not. Part of what we talk about on the Nursing Underground and what I focused on, which in our next 30 minutes after this push for these podcasters, who I feel they have a great platform and they need to be heard, and I need to push them as much as possible. I'll be discussing some more problems that's come up in the healthcare field with staffing and availability of beds and such things. One more podcast I want to talk about that I've gotten to know this lady not very well, but I've gotten to talk to her a few times in the last few weeks. And I've watched most all of her episodes and gone back and watched episodes of her show on Rumble and YouTube. It's called Dark to Light. The host is 2A Patriot Mama. Her buddy is called OEF. You have to go watch the show to understand what she's doing. She is putting a focus on child trafficking, any kind of trafficking, child trafficking in general. She supports a charity called Change Unchained. My group that I'm in with Stacy and Miss Pierce, together, we've got several other board members that work with us. And we once or twice a month do just a fundraiser for this Change Unchained. Look into them. They're at changeunchained.com. Go look and see what they do. They provide many houses for these trafficking victims, and they do the aftercare, which actually is just as important as getting them out of the situation and getting them saved. A lot of people get them out of the situation, but they don't have these aftercare programs, and that's just as important as getting them out of it. But if you get a chance and you're looking for something to do and you don't have something, the weather's cold and there's nothing to do outside, and you don't have anything to do in the afternoon, go hunt these podcasters up. They're great people, great people. I'm proud to call them my friends. But it's Renegades Rant, A Little Extra Lambo, and Dark to Light. If you've been paying attention to the news this week, you understand that nursing homes are closing left and right all over the country. Just like I've said in previous episodes, that the actions of our government is going to cause nursing homes to close. That's where we are. Every week I read about this nursing home, that nursing home. This company has 3 nursing homes in this city that they're having to close. There was one nursing home, I forgot exactly what city it was, but they were running 4 beds per room, and CMS said you can only have 2. And they said, well, if we don't get exceptions for that rule, then we'll have to close because we can't make any money with just 2 beds in a room. So they'll probably end up closing because I don't think they'll give the go ahead for that. We've seen people buying nursing license. That's all in general. They were buying a transcript and buying a diploma, and then taking and applying for to be a nurse, and they were taking the NCLEX for dummies, and they were sitting and taking tests, and they have passed and had license for years before this got uncovered. And then it seems like all of these schools that are being hit for not being certified to do nursing are popping up everywhere. I think one's been in Maryland and one's been in Houston. The original article that I saw, I think, was in Florida, where they were buying the transcripts and the diplomas and going to be a nurse. Here's my question. What have the boards of nursing been doing? Isn't it their job to make sure that these schools have license to teach the craft? Aren't their jobs to be a watchdog agency for the public? And what are they watching? What have they been spending their time doing? When I went through and started doing research on the next show, which will be this, what I find is that they find a bunch of nurses that have done some questionable things, and then they just pull all their license, which pulls away from the amount of nurses we have in the field. But in the meantime, you got people that aren't qualified technically to be nurses that are nurses. How many nurses is this going to entail? I'm right now to the point where my research has found that we're talking about 60 to 70,000 nurses nationwide, possibly. Not that it is, just possibly the numbers would make it that. We have a problem on this side of our field right now, and I'll be delving into that into the future. We have the information coming out about the vaccine, plus all the other political crap that's going on is hiding this VAERS report. It's hiding the Pfizer report. It's hiding the people that are dropping dead from blood clots. They're hiding all of this, and probably on purpose. The news media this past week it don't know what to do or say about it, because they've pushed it so long and so hard, because they were told to by our government, and now the numbers aren't in their favor at all. And all of the people that have been labeled conspiracy theorists have been proven right. That should scare the hell out of everybody sitting in their house listening to this right now, or sitting in their car listening to this right now. Because if they've lied about this, what else have they lied about as far as your immunizations and as far as your health care is concerned? Have they hidden a potentially good treatment that might prevent something in the future for you? Probably. Because, there's no money to be made in a cure. There's only money to be made in a treatment. And we'll get to all of that. I will be delving into this male sexual assault victims and female predators again next week. Like I said, I have got so much information here. I could only delve to talk about it 30 minutes at the time, because I've fallen victim to being the stereotypical male and want to give the high fives. I'm not going to lie about it. Why should I? I don't have anything to gain or lose by saying that. That should scare every parent with a male child, because you're already probably looking out for your female child. But it's never once crossed your mind that it could be your male child that becomes a victim, and he don't tell you anything, and he doesn't say anything. So let's open our eyes to what's next door to us, okay? That's all I'm asking. I will be trying to get in touch with a guy that was trafficked as a teenager for 22 months, and try to talk to him, really trying to get him for an interview. I think it would be an awesome thing for me. I've never done an interview on this show before. I've just normally talk, give you statistics, and say bye. Give you histories so you can understand what's going on better with your health care. I think this issue is just as important now. You can, if you want to, hunt me down on social media. I have a page on Facebook called the Gray State Mafia. I have a Twitter page called Gray State Mafia. TikTok, I have Gray's Ghost and Ghost of Gray and GSM Returns. I am on Clapper as the Gray State Mafia. I'm basically all over social media. I hope you enjoyed spending a little bit of time with me. I try not to push my show out too far, so you have enough to listen to when you're driving to work or coming home from work, or you're traveling down the road. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the people that's listened to me and downloaded me in the last month. I've had several issues where I wasn't able to record, but I'm back. I'm back now for good. Find me on TikTok Live every night about 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, or 9 o'clock Eastern or 8 o'clock Central. We'll be doing Patriot to Patriot crowdfunding. We do that a lot there. It's something I found that I can do on there and not feel bad about wasting any time. We are trying to change America fundamentally. We can do it through every aspect. Some people talk about all ranges of subjects. Some people talk about politics. I talk about healthcare and the medicine industry and the nursing industry and how it affects your life. Once again, if you're out there and you need something good to listen to, and just remember, you got Renegade's Rant A Little Extra Lambo, and Dark to Light. Hit the subscribe buttons to these shows so you'll be notified when their newest episodes are out. I'd like to take this time to thank everybody that's listened to my show. Subscribe to my show. I'll have a podcast starting back up too on the politics side of things and current event side called the Gray State Revolution, because that's where we're living in is a gray state. We're between that point of a democracy, which is what the government claims we are, but we're not. We're a republic. But a democracy always leads to a dictatorship. And that area between the two is called a gray state. We'll see y'all again next week. Hope you have a great week at work. Y'all take care and good night.
You have been listening to The Nursing Underground, a podcast dedicated to informing you of the white noise in politics and healthcare, and helping you redefine the trees in the forest. Join Big Dave again next week in The Nursing Underground from Ridge Runner Studios.